Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Wednesday night class that we do weekly. Welcome to all our new friends. We always like to start off with giving because how we give, that's how God is going to give to us. So I'm going to start off with giving tzedakah, and then in the chat box, I'm going to put a list of names for Refuah Shalema and in memory of. So if everyone could write the names as well so people can say amen together. And I just want to dedicate this class on the flyer to Miriam Baskina Pesi Yocheved. She should have a complete Refuah Shalema. And I would like to ask for everyone to pray for everyone on the list, but I'm going to ask for my neighbor, Razel Basadas, a very dear neighbor that needs a Refuah Shalema. So if everyone could write that name down, we should hear a miracle because Hashem could do anything. And before we start our program tonight, it's the 9 days and it's a time of sadness, but we also like to believe that we like to turn sadness into joy and celebrating in a way by giving tzedakah and doing extra kind deeds for people and just doing more mitzvos, and that will help bring Mashiach. So we're going to start off with a video that's really appropriate to our topic, a Holocaust story that inspired me, and I'm so grateful that Rochel Chitrik is on tonight. So if we can start off with the video, and if everyone could stay muted but sing along just to get in the mode, because I feel like we owe it to the people of the Holocaust. So Rochel Chitrik, if you could just unmute yourself. Does everyone hear me? Welcome. We're just waiting for our guest speaker, Rochel Chitrik, to unmute herself. I want to introduce you to a very dear neighbor who I knew my whole life, who was always such a friendly face always, and she is going to share a beautiful story about her mom. I would pass her mother at times. I never knew the story about her. She always just looked like a wonderful, classy, amazing woman. But today she's going to share with us a story that I didn't know until recently. She was a Holocaust survivor, both her parents, and I felt that it was very appropriate to share in the 9 days to remember, we should never forget, and what we can learn from these amazing, courageous women. So just give me one moment.
Okay, here.
Yeah.
Here.
Welcome, Rochel. We're so lucky to have you tonight. Do you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, you're on.
Okay. Can start?
Yes.
Okay. So hello, everybody, and thank you, Chaya. I didn't hear the beginning, so whatever it was, probably you said something good.
We said
And-
something amazing, that you're just a wonderful person, and we're very blessed to have you tonight. And I feel very lucky to be your neighbor.
Okay, so am I, and thank you for your kind words. Speakers usually start with a joke, but tonight marks the 6th day of the 9 days of mourning. Days we mourn over the destruction of the temples in Jerusalem. The 9 days are from Rosh Chodesh Av, from the beginning of this month, till the 9 days, which is called Tisha B'Av, and this is the day that the temples were destroyed. Mourning in Judaism is expressed and practiced in 2 paths. The first, by refraining from eating meat and drinking wine, and we do not participate in parties such as weddings, etc. The second path is an active one. The 9 days are a time of reflection or inner mourning. It's a time when one needs time to spend and understand and internalize the deeper meaning of destruction, of tragedy that befell our ancestor. We need to understand that the cause that brought about such calamities, and more importantly, what we can do that will literally reverse what happened. The second aspect of mourning, the inner mourning, is also the source of inspiration and resilience to overcome hardship, pain, and sorrow, and to forge ahead in life. The story I'm going to tell about my parents contains both elements of mourning, their tragic youth, and also their journey out of the ashes. And although these stories have to be heard, now is the extra special time to tell them. Most of the stories I know about my mother, we didn't hear from her. It was my father that related it to us, bits and pieces here and there. The house I grew up in was a happy home of fun and laughter, and I guess my mother of blessed memory didn't want to pass on the sadness to her children. My mother was born in Lodz, Poland, to a prosperous family, attended Sarah Schneerer Bes Yaakov religious school, and had an extended, large Hasidic family. In short, she had it all. She was 14 years old when World War II broke out, and the life she knew changed forever. She was the second of 3 daughters, and immediately took the leadership role and responsibility, using her initiative and courage to save her family. When the German overran Poland, Jews were forced to hand over their businesses to the German. The keys to my grandfather's business was handed over to them. He owned a large store selling important textile, and he had to close it. Religious Jew with typical Jewish appearances, a beard, long coat, as it was customary to wear, refrained from going out of the house out of fear of being attacked and vandalized. They were attracting the wrong attention. There was one set of keys that remained in my grandfather's possession. My mother, against her father's protest, would sneak into the store at night by picking the roll-up gate just enough to crawl in. Once inside, she would wrap around her some of the finer and expensive lace, and then sell it in the black market So this helped the family to survive by generating some cash to buy and purchase bits and pieces of food in time of war. In 1940, Jews of Lodz were confined to the Lodz ghetto, where each family was allotted a tiny room. My grandparents and their 3 daughters, with whatever household goods they could carry on their back, were cramped into a small room inside the ghetto. My grandmother was frail and had difficulty tracking the distance to the ghetto. Seeing the situation, my mother turned over the kitchen table, tied a rope to the table legs. She and the sisters tied the other end of the rope around their necks and somehow managed to carry their mother onto the ghetto on this table. The next 4 years inside the ghetto were ones of misery, hunger, sickness, and dangerous attempts to get their meager weekly food ration by working in the ghetto factory. Many times my mother would come home saying that she already ate a portion of food and she has just a little bit extra and gave it to her parents to eat. The Germans slowly began to empty the ghetto with daily transports of Jews to the unknown. Those transported were first loaded onto wooden wagons. Yes, those wagons that you saw in pictures and read in books that they were carrying the dead on. And were taken to an abandoned asylum in far end of the ghetto. It was from there that they were forced to get onto the trains to the extermination camps. One evening, my mother's family was directed to leave the ghetto and headed to this dilapidated building, which was surrounded by a tall wall and barbed wire. Once inside, the scene was horrific, heartbreaking. Hundreds of people were pushed in, screaming, yelling. Parents were looking for lost children, for their young children. My mother's sharp intuition of what this situation would lead to gave her the courage, and she told her parents, we can't stay here. We have to find a way to run. But no one moved. Everybody, so she said, I'm going, can you see me? I'm sorry. I'm going to get you. She managed to push them.
We don't see you.
What?
We don't, your camera went off.
I'm sorry, somebody called me. I will, okay. So my mother told her parents, we can't stay there. You heard this part? We can't, it doesn't matter. We can't stay there. We have to find a way to run out. But nobody moved. Everybody was so scared and afraid and not knowing what's going on. So she told them, I am going to take you out of here. I will try to do it. She managed to push them towards the side wall, collect some bush leaves and garbage that was around to cover them, and try to make her way out. Going out was impossible. The doors were locked, or with tons of people trying to get pushed in. So she made her way to the 2nd floor. And from the 2nd floor, looked for a window to jump out of this house. She found a window and she jumped out. Danger and death was in front of her eyes. The German, Ymach Shemam, may their name be erased, shot anything that moved. She slowly made her way very carefully to this tall wall surrounding the building. Quietly, she piled some logs and stacked dead bodies that were lying all around, so it would help her to climb on that wall. And by digging her nails into the concrete blocks, managed to get on top. Even the barbed wire didn't stop her. She just went over them. Her clothes tore, her flesh was torn off her body, but she managed to jump over the wall and she was out. Once on the other side, once on the other side, she was discovered by the Germans who began shooting at her. Luckily, she avoided sure death by running into a tall stalk of cornfield. Wounded and bleeding, she remained hidden in the field. The tall stalks just were protecting her. After a while, in the darkness of night, she snuck back into the ghetto where she reached out to her uncle. Her uncle was in charge of the ghetto forced labor. And despite the curfew that was at night, he had some freedom of movement. She cried, she begged, she asked him to save her parents, her sister. Late at night, when the Germans were out of sight, her uncle went to save them. He found them in the building and miraculously brought them to the ghetto one at a time, right under the nose of the Germans. While my mother was watching the scene afar, not letting her guard down. Thus, the family was saved. As my mother promised, I will save you. Unfortunately, 2 years later, they were not so lucky and transported to Auschwitz with a large group of many that didn't survive the ride. It was already 1944. The Germans were in a hurry to implement their final solution and kill as many Jews as possible. Scared, exhausted, and eyesight that couldn't adjust the sunlight, the family came off the train and were separated upon their arrivals, with men, women, and children in separate lines. My grandmother, just prior of leaving the ghetto, managed to prepare for each family member a small cube of sugar, telling them, Kinderlach, when you feel your strength is just about to expire, suck on this cube. When my grandfather was separated from the family, my grandmother realized that he forgot his sugar cube with her. She gave a desperate cry, but no one moved. They were frozen with fear, and just looking at the huge dogs ready to attack any disturbance, in addition to the Germans that were roaming with machine guns, no one could help. Although screaming at the Jews, to the left, to the right, rechts, links, my mother, without hesitation, grabbed the forgotten sugar cube. She snuck out of her line and ran into the men's line looking for her father. My mother used to relate. Then when she at last found him, he handed him the piece of sugar. It was the last time that she saw him. Her father placed his hands on her head, closed his eyes, and with tears streaming down his cheeks, blessed her, while requesting her to keep an eye on her mother. But try as she indeed did, and my mother and her sisters tried to protect their mother very much in the few weeks that she was still with them. In mornings when everybody stood holding their hands up for hours, her mother couldn't do it. So my mother and her sisters used to inch their way towards her mother, so she can put her elbows on their shoulders. Many times they were caught, they were punished, they were beaten, but they didn't stop protecting her. But as try as she did, both my grandparents perished in the gas chambers. May God avenge their death. Viktor Frankl, in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, writes, everything can be taken from a man. But one thing, the freedom to choose one's attitude, to choose one's own way. My mother chose not to be a victim. She kept a positive look at life. There was a small window on top of the barrack that in mornings, when she couldn't sleep, when she was hungry and pained, she used to climb and look through that little window at the horizon. And, you know, Auschwitz was in civilization. She saw from far, she saw farms, she saw houses, she saw a farmer going out of his house and taking food from the ground. She even saw a chicken and a little girl playing outside. And she kept promising herself, one day I will have a house. The sun will shine on it. And I'll even have a little girl, which was me many years later. After the war, my mother was chosen to be a part of an organization that worked hard to search, find, and bring back Jewish children that were entrusted by their parents to Polish farmers or to nuns to put them in some churches, in hope of saving their lives and collecting them after the war. My mother had to meet her partner in the train station, and he told her to go up with him to the train. He had a pistol, so she felt a little bit protected, but really scared. At night, the first night, they came to a motel. He told her that she can sleep on the bed. He will stay next to the door. He took the pistol out, left it on the floor, and with his back leaned on the door a whole night. My mother couldn't sleep. She was still very afraid. But in the morning, she saw him going to the side and taking out from a little bag 2 black cubes. One of them he put on his hand and his head, and the other one he wrapped around his hands. And she realized that he was putting the tefillin on. So this calmed her down. My mother also could do it because she looked a little bit like Polish. She had fair skin, light hair, and green eyes. We in Israel kept in touch with Dinale, or Danusha, as we call her. She was a little girl entrusted to a Polish farmer. The family used her as a slave during the war. The farmer, after the war, didn't want to let go of her, even for a very large sum of money that was offered to him. So one morning, my mother and her partner found this Danusha walking in the field, taking care of the ducks. My mother came closer and offered her some candies and chocolates. When the girl came close enough, my mother grabbed her, wrapped her with the big shawls that she was dressed with, and ran off to the train station that was close by. The Polish family ran after them to retrieve the girl, but luckily they boarded the train before they were caught. Far away, at the same time that my mother was in the Lodz ghetto, there was a young yeshiva boy in a German army camp. His name was Mordechai David. He studied in a Lubavitcher yeshiva in Otvotsk before the war. And when the war began, he fled back to his hometown. He ended up in German Air Force camp, working with other 18 Jews until he was liberated. Mordechai David lost everyone, his parents, his sisters and brothers, his cousins. Although he survived the war, his life was shattered. and was left alone and broken. This young man was my father, who went through the hell of the Nazi cruelty machine. He had many stories that he carried in his heart. One story stands out and actually documented by a photo. Not wanting to eat the non-kosher food that the German provided in camp, he would gather whatever crumbs he could find to sustain himself. He managed to get small, half-broken, an electric pan, which was a big thing at war, and cooked some water and potatoes that he got his hands on. Once, after warming up his meager food, he hid the warm pan under his bed, not noticing that there was a piece of cloth next to the pan. The material caught fire, and so did the walls around. Just a few meters ahead were gasoline barrels prepared for the Russian front. The fire was controlled, by the way, but after an inquiry, they found the guilty criminal that intended to burn the camp. And my father was severely tortured and beaten. The next day, he was forced to dig a grave for himself. The Germans announced that at noon, all must be in the field to watch how the Jew is being executed. My father was forced to march at the head of 18 Jews with 3 German soldiers carrying machine guns in back of them, and march to the grave he dug. The German officer gave the order to fire. The clicks of the gun were loud and clear, ready to shoot. As my father was standing there and reciting the Shema Israel, a sound of a motorcycle pulling up was heard. The driver delivered a letter to the officer in charge. The officer announced, "A pardon was given. Jew, cover your grave." Days later, the prisoners that worked in the office found out that the commander of the camp was debating if to report the fire incident to the SS, as the German documented everything, fearing that he himself, the officer, would be punished for allowing this fire to happen, and he will be sent to the Russian front. So he decided to bury the entire incident. Years later, someone visiting Yad Vashem in Yerushalayim noticed in an exhibit a photograph of a young man standing over open grave, waiting to be shot. He recognized the face of my father. I actually have the pictures in my position, and I'm going to show you. I don't know if you can see. Is it close enough? My father is marching ahead of the other 18 prisoners in camp. Is it clear? I'm trying to bring it as close as possible. And the second picture that we have is my father here, standing in front of his grave and everybody watching, waiting to be shot. But survive he did. And so did my mother. How a human can continue living a normal life after experiencing such a trauma is a topic of itself. My parents not only survived, it was much more than that. They came to Israel in 1946 by boat that dropped them off far away from shore for the fear of being discovered by the British. They were transferred into rafts that brought them to the shore just to be caught by English soldiers that led them to Atlit. Atlit was a gated holding area until they will be sent back to Europe. They didn't let them go to inside the country. There was a very popular song that was sung on the boat over and over. It was Ani Ma'amin, I believe, which translated, I believe in the coming of Mashiach, even if his arrival will be delayed. The words of the songs are one of the 13 principles of faith as written by the Rambam, known as Yud Gimel Ikarim, 13 principles of faith. The Rambam, which his full name was Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, a Jewish rabbi, philosopher, doctor, and mathematician, lived in the 12th century in North Africa. He wrote many books on Jewish code of law and philosophy. He asked hard questions and explained the answer logically. His book touched every aspect of Jewish life, dealing with faith, with health, with laws of Shabbat, with divine providence, etc. The Rambam established the 13 fundamental principles of Jewish law, faith, that a Jew is obliged to believe in. For example, the existence of God. God is one. The Torah was given from heaven. The commandments were given to Moses on Har Sinai. The Torah and its commandments are eternal and cannot be changed. The 12th principle is the belief in the coming of Mashiach. This belief was always a part of the Jewish DNA. We Jews, even in the most difficult time of our faith of Mashiach, was never diminished. How did the song come about? Who wrote the lyric? The popular tune of Ani Ma'amin was composed by a Jew named Azriel David Fastak, while being transported by train to his death. There was no air, there was no food, but fear around. He felt all of a sudden a sense of yearning and belief. And he was a composer, a Hasidic composer. He started to hum the tune to the words of Ani Ma'amin. First very low, and then stronger and louder. And the people around him started to hum it, to sing it with him, louder and louder, with all the tensions that come with the songs. And even the next cart heard it, and the people started to sing it with him. And then Azriel David Fastak stopped, and he said, whoever is willing to jump off the train and bring the song to the Mozitzer Rebbe, the Rebbe of Mozitz, I am willing to give him half of my world to come. Well, two people jumped off the train. One of them, unfortunately, did not make it. Sorry. The second one, after much hardships and miracles, managed after the war to bring the song to the Vizhnitzer Rebbe. The Rebbe used to give a sermon, a drasha, before Yom Kippur to his Hasidim in Shul. That year, the Rebbe came in and he said, there will be no song. There will be no drasha, sorry, but there will be a song. And he taught the song to the Hasidim, and they were singing it over and over again before Kol Nidre. And the Rebbe said, the song was sung by Jews going to the guest chambers. With this song, we will go to greet Mashiach. My parents' marriage was attended by a minyan, some of them totally strangers, gathered in from the street to complete the minyan of 10 people. They were strong, yes, they carried the pain and had questions, but never left the path their parents paved for them. They never allowed doubts. Their victory over the Nazis was not only physical. Every little achievement was celebrated with thanks to God, this positive and thankful attitude that they constantly pronounced around them. God always answers our prayers, not always with a solution, sometimes just by holding our hands. Life in Israel wasn't easy. The country was yet to be built. My father was drafted to the army. He participated in some battles. Keeping kosher was a challenge. My mother didn't know all the laws. She left home when she was young, and here she had to run a Jewish home. So she got friendly with an older lady that taught her all the laws, the dinim of a kosher home. You know, those days in Israel, we couldn't buy kosher chicken in the store. My mother went, she bought a chicken. She had to bring it to be slaughtered, right? And then she had to clean it herself and kosher it herself. But she did it willingly and happily. As they say, if you don't have the life you love the life you have. Together, my parents of blessed memory built a beautiful home, and the dark cloud of the previous years was never present in our house. As mentioned, it was a house of happiness, laughter, lots of music, and sensitivity to others. People have told me that in difficult times, my mother would travel to the other side of town to bring milk to some families. She would send out meals to the needy, despite facing her own difficult time making ends meet in Israel. The compensation my father received from the German government, he donated for building a shul in Tel Aviv, where the sound of learning and prayers are constantly heard. Ani ma'amin, Am Israel Chai. Thank you.
Wow, Rachel, that was really, really special. When I came to pay a Shiva call to you, I didn't know this about your mom. Only a few weeks later at a friend's house, Betsy Rabashkin, you shared these words with your mom. And right after I came to you and I said, could you please share this with my ladies? Because the stories are unbelievable. And your mom, if you saw her on the street, you would never know the pain that she went through.
As I said, she chose to live life happily.
It's unbelievable. And you definitely, she has so much nachas. So if you could just say your mom's and dad's full name, their neshama should have
Yes.
Aliyah.
My mother's name is Hannah Fradel Bat Ishaya Shlomo, and my father's name is Mordechai David Ben Levi Yitzchak. As a matter of fact, I have the picture right here, so maybe I will put it on. These are my parents.
Beautiful. They say when people pass on, they live on through their families, but only their bodies die and their neshamas live on for forever. And they should always protect you all, your whole family. And thank you for sharing that beautiful, vulnerable story that's so heavy, but yet so beautiful, because they built such a beautiful family and generations. So it's really incredible. I wanted to ask you a question. So I grew up on Easton Parkway. We were neighbors literally 2 doors down. And it's interesting because we only connected recently. We have wonderful neighbors on the block, all amazing people. saying hello and kind, but like, I don't know if we ever had the opportunity to sit and chat, which makes me realize that I should really take the opportunity now to get to know my neighbors in a way, because everyone has a story. So I hope takeaway, everyone will ask your neighbors and share and the stories that you all have. But living on the block of 770, I'm wondering if you have any personal stories to share with us tonight, a family story or a personal story of the Rebbe. It was very meaningful to me. Like I lived when the Rebbe passed away at 9, so 9 years of my life. And I want to share the Rebbe with all of you, because when you love something, you want to share it with everyone. So I want to share this amazing hidden gift that was hidden from many that didn't get the chance to get to know him, but now we can all learn through stories. So I want to know if you would honor us tonight by sharing a few words, what it was like to live on Eastern Parkway on the block of 770, so people can understand what life was like when the Rebbe was here with us in a physical form. Now he's here in a spiritual form, which they say that neshamas only die if we let them die. So a tzaddik never, their neshamas never die. It was just the holy Arizal's yahrzeit, and the Rebbe quoted him many times, and it was, they say about the Arizal that he's here more than ever. It was just his yahrzeit, I believe 2 nights ago. So I just want to mention the holy Arizal, and he should protect all of us. He was a huge Kabbalist. So I want to hear from you words of wisdom about your experience with the Rebbe, and then and a story if you have one, and then we'll conclude with a Rebbe video. So thank you, Rochel, for being so gracious tonight.
You caught me a bit off, but it's okay. As you said, we were very lucky to live on Eastern Parkway because we saw the Rebbe coming to 770 to the shul, and my kids were so excited to sit by the windows, on the windowsill, and watching the Rebbe going to shul and then going back home. It was very exciting. You want me to share a Rebbe story? So I was also lucky that the Rebbe was in my life since a very young age. I went to Chassidus a few times, to an audience, private audience a few times. One time, interestingly enough, I was learning in Bes Yaakov, and the Rebbe told me to move school, to leave the school and go to Beis Rivka, which was in Kfar Chabad. It was really far. I lived in Petach Tikva, and Kfar Chabad, I had to take 3 buses to get to school in those days. And but nevertheless, the Rebbe insisted that I should change school. There was no problem. He just said it's better for you, and was very successful and happy. Well, when I moved to the other school. A story of the Rebbe. You know what? Maybe I will connect my mother with that story. We were married for 2 years, and we didn't have children yet. My mother came to visit us on Yom Tov, stayed with me, and didn't tell me that on Hoshana Rabbah, she was planning to go by the Rebbe. On Hoshana Rabbah, which is the 7th day of Sukkot, the Rebbe used to stand hours and give people lekach and bless them. Hoshana Rabbah is a very special day. It's a day that people spend in shul, people spend saying Tehillim, and it's a final day of judgment, a day when everybody is inscribed for happy good year. And as I said, the Rebbe was giving lekach. My mother was standing in line, and my mother, being my mother, as you heard before, decided to ask to help me and ask for a blessing from the Rebbe. And she told the Rebbe that we don't have children yet, and asked for a blessing. The Rebbe gave her a blessing, and then my mother said, "I'm asking for a promise." And the Rebbe said, "I don't promise, but I will bless you." And he gave her an extra piece of lekach. My mother left the line, was going down the step of the shul, And as she going down the steps and looking at her hands, trying to cover the 2 pieces of cake, who came across of her? It was me. I was the first person that bumped into her. My mother was so excited. That was a sign for her that it's going to be okay. She gave me the piece of lekach, made me make a bracha and eat it on the spot. Needless to say that year I had my first daughter. My mother didn't have to go through the line again because the next 7 years I had my 6 children, thank God. But I want to say that if you want to find me on Hoshana Rabbah, you'll see me by the Ohel. I never forget, or I try, many years probably I missed, but I do and go and say thank you to the Rebbe every year on Hoshana Rabbah.
Wow, that was really such a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that with us. If it's okay, we have a question. And if anyone has any questions for Rochel, please let us know. But what's amazing about this story is that you didn't forget to say thank you. You got the gift, but you said thank you. So Hashem should continue blessing you, and you should have so many reasons to go to the Ohel to say thank you. So thank you for sharing that story. That was very meaningful for me to hear, and I'm sure many of you. We have a question. Someone wants to know what happened to the man from the hotel with the pistol. Like if you ever had any contact with him after.
Okay. When the story happened, obviously it was in time of war. That man continued saving a lot of children. His name was Zemek. I just know his Polish name. My mother did not know his name because when they were traveling, in case one of them will be caught, nobody should know too many details about the other. I do know that he saved a lot of children. People told us later that he died he had some sickness in his liver, because when he went to these Polish farmers to try to save the children, he first came as a friend, as a Polish friend, and drank with them and became friendly, paid them, drank, and eventually his liver got sick and he passed away. I don't know more than that.
Wow, a true tzaddik. So whoever he is, his neshama should have the highest aliyah. And they say if you save a life, you save the world and you go straight to Gan Eden. So there's no question in my mind that your mom, your dad, this guy, they're all up there for bringing, smiling down and shining their light on us. We should never experience anything like this. But takeaway from this story is that as Jews, we must stick together. There's many different people that come onto this class from different backgrounds, but at the end of the day, we're all the same because we're all Jewish. All the Jews went to the camps, and they all ended up the same way. Didn't matter of what their ideology was, what religious, like where they were religiously. It didn't matter. What mattered was that they were Jewish and they just wanted to kill them because they were a Jew. So today, we should all stand up for being a Jew and be a proud Jew and wear our clothing in a proud way. If it's a kippah, if it's wearing our clothing, being modest, just walking down the street so everyone should know that we are Jewish and we are proud to be Jewish, and we should merit to have Mashiach. They say, I learned this week, that Galus just keeps getting darker and darker, which we see today. There's constant tragedies. We keep hearing how young people are dying from crazy ways. And they say that when someone passes away, the Malach HaMaves complained to God, and he said, the angel of death, he said, they're all going to blame me. And God said, no, it's going to be cancer. It's going to be a car accident. It's going to be drugs. It's going to be overdose. It doesn't matter. But at the bottom line is that we need to do everything we can to help bring Mashiach. And it could be the smallest to the biggest mitzvah. We shouldn't measure it. And the the most important thing is that we must stick together and love each other despite our differences. So thank you, Rochel, for sharing your beautiful story. I hope you're going to write a book one day about your mom and dad, because I'm sure there were many, many more stories. But I'm so glad Hashem chose to save their lives, because the amount of amazing people that came from their family dynasty is incredible. And thank you for being such a special and nice neighbor. And I'm looking forward to seeing you and catching up. And it's really, really special. So
Thank you, Chaya.
and we should only share good news. We are going to conclude with a video. So thank you for sharing.
Elie Wiesel was a Holocaust survivor, prolific author, Nobel Prize laureate, and activist.
I had a friend called Gershon Jacobson. He was working for a Yiddish paper, I think for the Morgenjournal. I was working for the Forwards. And we would meet at meetings, press conferences, and so forth. And I liked him. And he said to me, you must come to Fabringen. Let's all Fabringen. And I came. And I saw the Rebbe really. I saw the Rebbe at work, and that was enough. I saw him. And I realized that all the tsar in the world, all the pain in the world, all the Jewish saw him in the world, were on his face. Then I asked for Fabringen, and of course I came and we spent, I thought 10 minutes, then I thought 20 minutes, then I thought maybe a half hour. We spent like 2 or 3 hours. And he said, come back. And came back as often as possible, as I could. For a while, he saw that I disagreed with him on getting married. There are many letters which you don't have, personal letters, about getting married and what it means to get married. But he did not follow my protest. He understood it, but he didn't follow it. Yet he understood that my protest was an inner protest from inside the Muneh, not outside the Muneh. It wasn't even against the Muneh. It was because of the Muneh that I had a protest. As I think I said it to him. I said, I don't have chutzpah klape Shemaya, but I have trunia klape Shemaya. And he understood it. Of course he did. When I got married in Jerusalem, the most beautiful bouquet of flowers I received in my life, probably, was a rose with a little note there, and then I got a letter. He belongs to a deep zone in my life. It's like Yaakov Avinu, like from Avinu, the most Yekna Shaloviv came to him at a critical moment. And with me, if I have, let's say, I'm at a crossroad and I need to make a decision, right or left, what do I do? I ask either literally I see the face of my mother or my father, and I know it comes to Ruchnius. I see the Rebbe's, do the Yeknish Rebbe. I must say that personally I miss him profoundly and terribly.
Thank you very much. A long time I have not seen you. As I read about you in life, not enough. Amen. Noch mehr. Nicht dringend sein. Nicht dringend, nicht dringend sein.
A ripe banana is one of the most.
Thank you so much for sharing. I just want to share with you all that I had the merit when I worked in the Preschool of the Arts in Chelsea, Manhattan. I met Elie Wiesel. I saw him. I was in the gym working with children. I've been working with kids for forever. And I was super shy then, but I said, I need to go say hello and get a blessing, because the Lubavitcher Rebbe said that a Holocaust survivor has the power to bless because of what they went through. So I went over to him, super shy, told him who I was. He knew my uncle. So I said, I'm Rabbi Lipsker's niece, because I was super shy. And I said, would you give me a blessing? And he took his 2 hands and he blessed me. I don't know what he said, but he definitely blessed me. And it was a really special moment. And recently someone who worked with me reminded me how till today she's jealous that I took the opportunity to go over to him and get the blessing. So when we have an opportunity, we shouldn't miss it. So I hope the blessings do come true. He had a really beautiful and special relationship with the Rebbe. And I just want to mention something towards the end of the video, when he was getting lekach, which is honey cake from the Rebbe, which the Rebbe used to give before Yom Kippur. There was a man in the middle of him, and there was a man right by him. And he was my dear neighbor. His name was Rabbi Benjamin Klein. And it was actually his birthday today. Today was his birthday. So Rabbi Benjamin Klein should have a really special birthday. And he should also come back with Mashiach. His family misses him terribly. He was the Rebbe's secretary. He gave his life to the Rebbe and his life to the people, and he kept everything quiet. He never shared, and he had a very high position, but a very hard position. So I want to send comfort to my dear neighbor, Mrs. Klein, and the whole family. Hashem should bless you, that we should just have Mashiach, and you should have your father here in a physical form that we can see him. And someone would like to share with us tonight, Joelle, a dear friend of mine from Florida, a very, very dear friend, share with us. So if you can unmute yourself, because anyone who would like to share, we'd like to turn this into a bring-in. So.
Well, thank you so much, Chaya. But when you mentioned Elie Wiesel, I had the honor of meeting him and actually cooking for him. The first time was in Chicago. He was coming for a lecture, I think through the Federation. And I asked, what does he love to eat? Like, what are his favorite things? And I created the menu based on what he liked. And then the following 2 times that he came to Chicago, he requested that I make his favorite chocolate cake. So it was such an honor to bring joy to his palate. That's the way I share love. And it was a beautiful connection. And I treasure those moments with him.
Wow, thank you for sharing. That's so beautiful. Joelle is right now currently living in Belle Harbor, Florida, and she's a chef. So if anyone needs a chef, when you go to Florida, I don't think that's what you do. You do that right now, like a private chef?
I do.
She wears a lot of hats, but that's one of them. And I hope when I come to Florida, you'll cook for me next time I come.
It'll be the greatest honor.
It'll be very special. And I'm hoping that you'll come on to this class and share some amazing stories that you've told me privately in the future. That would be very special.
Thank you. And Chaya, thank you so much for collaborating and bringing all these beautiful women from so many different backgrounds and cultures and lifestyles together. We're all one. Am Yisrael Chai, all of us women. Beautiful Eishes Chayils. Thank you, Chaya.
Thank you, Joelle, for sharing. And thank you, Rochel, for sharing tonight with us. Very special. We hope you'll tune in again in the future. And I hope that from the takeaway from tonight, that we just love each other more and become friends with your neighbors. If you have a neighbor, like, look out for them, like, ask them questions. You never know, you might make a really special friend. And I want to ask everyone in the 9 days, if everyone could please take on one more thing to do to help bring Mashiach. So that would be really special and be the reason why someone smiles today. And if you love this class, please share this with one of your friends so they can tune in too. And it was really, really nice to see you all tonight. And we have to also remember that, yes, it's a really sad time, but we must serve Hashem with joy, because that's what God wants. We should never be sad. Every mitzvah that we do, we have to do it joyfully. And if we don't do it joyfully, then we're not doing it right. So, yeah. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Chaya.
Thank you, Chaya.
Came right away.
So nice.
Oh, Connie, you're on?
Yes, thank you very much for a beautiful event. Thank you.
Very happy to hear you.
I was
and
just
see
able
you.
to catch a little bit of it because unfortunately, well, I'll talk to you later. We were at a Shiva house, but all is well. We should celebrate Simchas together, everybody. Amen.
Amen. Amen. And welcome everyone for being on. Thank you, guys. Good night.
Thank you, Chaya. It was beautiful. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you, everybody.
Good night.